My daughter was in the hospital. No one came from family. But 2 days later, Mom texted, "Can you help with your brother's honeymoon fund? $5,000 should do." I just cut them off. The next morning, my dad called repeatedly, and when I answered, I watched the monitors blink slowly, methodically, like they weren't connected to a 4-year-old fighting for her breath. My daughter Layla had been in the hospital for over a day now. Pneumonia. Serious enough to keep us in ICU. The nurses were wonderful, but there's only so much comfort they can offer when you're pacing hospital floors at 3 a.m., terrified and alone. I sent texts the first night. To my mom. To my dad. Even to my brother Jason, though we hadn't talked in months because he was too busy with wedding stuff. No one responded. Not a single word. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, thought maybe they were asleep or missed it somehow. By the next morning, nothing. And I mean nothing. The nurse brought me coffee. I hadn't eaten. Layla stirred in her sleep once, but the oxygen mask was still on. I remember sitting on the little plastic couch by the window looking out at the parking lot and thinking, no one's coming. And that realization? It gutted me in a way I hadn't been ready for. I didn't grow up in a perfect family, but we weren't estranged or anything. I called my mom every other week. Helped my dad with paperwork when his back started acting up. Even gave Jason and his fiancée $1,200 last month to cover some emergency with their wedding venue. I didn't even ask for it back. So when 2 full days passed in that hospital room and still no one called, I knew something had shifted. I was holding Layla's hand, watching her finally fall into something like real sleep when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "No, how's Layla? No, we're coming. Just this. Can you help with your brother's honeymoon fund? $5,000 should do." I stared at it so long the screen went dim. Then I just turned off the phone. That night, I sat with Layla and made a decision. I was done being the family's safety net. The emotional dump. If they couldn't show up for my daughter during the scariest moment of her life, then they weren't family to me anymore. I cut them off. Blocked my mom. Blocked Jason. Didn't even bother with explanations. Just disappeared from their world the way they had disappeared from mine. The next morning my dad called. Not once. 16 times before 9 a.m. I didn't answer the first 15. But on the 16th I did. And the second I said hello, he started yelling. What he said next made the air feel even thinner than it already was in that ICU room. He said they needed my social security number. For a loan. And that was just the beginning. When I asked him why the hell they needed my social, he didn't even pause. He said Jason and his new wife were having issues with the honeymoon resort booking. Something about a deposit that couldn't be refunded and needing a second booking last minute. Their credit cards were maxed, and since I had better credit, he figured he'd just use mine for a small personal loan to float them through. Like it was normal. Like it was expected. I sat there in that uncomfortable hospital chair with Layla hooked up to IVs and machines, and listened to my own father explain how he tried to use my identity to help my brother go to freaking Maui. He hadn't called to check on Layla. He hadn't asked if we needed help. He wanted my name and credit to solve a problem for the golden child. I hung up. 30 seconds later, a text came in from an unknown number. My dad again, using my mom's phone this time since I'd blocked him. It said something like, "Don't overreact. It's family. Jason's your brother." Then Jason called. I didn't pick up. Then his wife. I watched her name light up my screen like it had any right to be there. She left a voicemail, something about how this whole thing is stressing everyone out, and if I cared about the family, I'd help. That was the moment it clicked. They had never seen Layla as family. They saw her as my burden. Me. I was the backup plan. The reliable one. The extra card in their hand. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my grandparents. They lived just outside the city. My mom's parents. We used to be close when I was little before my parents gradually drifted away from them. I'd always assumed it was just because of age or distance. I told them about Layla. About the hospital. About everything. And they showed up. Within 2 hours, my grandpa walked into that ICU room with a soft blanket from their house and a hot lunch in a thermos. My grandma brought a little stuffed dog she said Layla used to love when she was a baby. They stayed the whole afternoon. Held her hand. Talked to her even though she was sleeping. Sat with me when I cried for the first time in 3 days. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. My parents. Jason again. I ignored every call. Until later that evening when I got an email from a loan provider. It said my application had been denied due to suspicious duplicate attempts using matching personal information. My parents had already tried. They had filled out a loan application in my name. And when it got flagged, they'd had the nerve to call me and ask for my info so they could fix it. That was the moment I felt something shift. Like the final string snapping. They hadn't just abandoned my daughter. They tried to commit fraud. Hence me. And they still hadn't even sent a card or balloon or a voice note for Layla. I took a long look at my phone, then opened my camera roll, found the latest photo of Layla sleeping, and sent it to my mom with just one sentence. "You will never know her again." They thought I was bluffing. They had no idea what was coming. It took less than a week for everything to unravel. Layla got stronger. Her fever broke. Her breathing normalized. We were moved out of ICU into a recovery room. And every single day my grandparents showed up with food, clean clothes, and stories about when I was Layla's age. They didn't ask for anything. They just stayed. Meanwhile, my parents were spiraling. I didn't know at first. I wasn't checking anything from them. But my grandparents heard things. They still had some connections. A neighbor, a mutual friend at church. And little pieces started to trickle in. Turns out, Jason's wedding had been financed almost entirely with borrowed money. My parents had taken out a personal loan months ago, probably assuming they'd pay it off with help from me like always. When I cut them off and blocked their access, they tried to open another line of credit under my name. When that failed, they turned on each other. My mom accused my dad of being financially reckless. He blamed her for spoiling Jason like a damn prince. Jason, meanwhile, moved into their house with his new wife after the honeymoon fell through. They fought constantly. My dad lost his part-time contract work due to stress, and my mom was threatening to sell her car just to make a mortgage payment. It was happening faster than anyone expected. The second house, the one they were living in, technically belonged to my grandparents. I hadn't known that until my grandma told me over lukewarm tea in the hospital cafeteria. Years ago, they'd bought it as an investment and let my parents live there rent-free under the promise that they'd maintain it and take care of them in old age. That promise clearly meant nothing now. I guess my parents had been telling people I was helping cover the mortgage too. My grandma looked genuinely heartbroken when she told me that. I hadn't paid a cent toward that house. Never even been asked. They just told people I had. Because I was supposed to. That was the role they'd given me in their little family story. When I removed myself, everything collapsed. Jason called me one night from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. He said thanks for ruining his life. That now everyone knew what kind of sister I was. That mom and dad were in a bad place because of me. That they'd probably lose the house. Then a pause. And he added, "But I know your credit score, Jane. You're not going to get away from this forever." That voicemail? I saved it, then forwarded it to my grandparents. I didn't need revenge. It was already coming. I just didn't realize yet how far they'd actually go, or how badly it would all end. The next time my phone buzzed, it was from the hospital's financial office. They wanted to confirm something. Apparently, someone had called pretending to be me, trying to update the billing address for Layla's hospital account. They gave my parents' home address and said all future bills should be sent there, and that I'd be out of state for a while. But the hospital flagged it because the voice didn't match the recording they had on file. That and the person slipped up and said, "My granddaughter," when referencing Layla. It was my mom. They tried to reroute my child's medical bills. Not to help pay them. Oh no, they made that clear in the message they left behind at the billing desk. They were trying to claim Layla on their insurance. Somehow. Fraudulently. Maybe they thought they'd get some kind of payout or coverage. I don't know what they were thinking. That was it for me. I called a lawyer. He said I didn't have a case strong enough for criminal charges, but I could file a formal fraud alert. I did. We locked down my credit. Flagged all medical records. I listed my mom, dad, Jason, and his wife as unauthorized on everything. They couldn't call, email, or request a thing without setting off alarms. And then I went quiet. Didn't post anything online. Didn't respond to anything from family. But I did one thing. I sent a certified letter to my grandparents' lawyer, because they still had one on retainer from years ago, and told him everything. With evidence, screenshots, voicemails, a copy of the hospital report about the impersonation attempt. Within 4 days, my grandparents took over full control of the second house. And I found out something else. That house, the one my parents had been living in for over 10 years, was in my name. My grandparents had quietly transferred ownership to me 2 years ago. Just in case. They never told me. They were waiting until I was more stable. The only reason my parents hadn't known is because the mail was being sent to a P.O. box my grandma controlled. Smartest woman I've ever met. And so I made a decision. I gave them 30 days to vacate. No exceptions. They got the notice in person. Delivered by someone from the lawyer's office. Jason called me screaming. His wife sent me a message that just said, "You're evil." My mom finally texted. Not to say sorry. Not to ask about Layla. But to beg me to reconsider punishing them for a misunderstanding. Then came the final card they tried to play. They showed up at my grandparents' house. Unannounced. It was a Saturday. Layla was playing with chalk on the patio. My dad walked right past her without saying a word. My mom had tears in her eyes. Jason stood behind them like some kind of backup muscle. My grandpa stepped outside. He told them to leave. They didn't. So my grandma came out holding a manila envelope. He handed it to my mom. Inside, copies of every debt they'd secretly taken out in my name, flagged and frozen now, plus a statement of the house transfer. Then she said one sentence. Just one. And whatever it was, I wasn't close enough to hear. It shut my parents up cold. They turned around and walked off the property. That was the last time they ever stepped foot near us again. But it still wasn't over. Not yet. After they left my grandparents' house, it got quiet. For maybe a week. I think they were scrambling. Desperate. I could almost feel it, like a pressure in the air, like something waiting to explode. I started double-checking the locks at night, kept Layla close. I didn't know what they were capable of anymore. And then the letter came. Not from them. From a debt collection agency. They had tried one last time, to take out a loan using my info, but this time they tried to list me as a co-signer. The loan had been denied, obviously. But they'd still sign papers. Still use my name. It was sloppy and it got flagged, but not before the paperwork got passed around between a few sketchy lenders. That was when I realized they were truly broke. Like no options left broke. My lawyer got the paperwork squashed fast, but we both knew what this meant. They weren't going to apologize. Not to me. Not to Layla. They weren't going to take responsibility. They were just going to keep digging until the dirt caved in on top of them. Then Jason's wife started posting online. Little jabs at me without using my name. Talking about heartless family members, and how some people think money makes them better. Friends of friends sent me screenshots. I ignored them, but I saved everything. It was sad, really, all that energy to protect the people who had destroyed their own future. Meanwhile, my grandparents quietly prepared for the next step. They had been patient long enough. They had given my parents years of rent-free living, supported Jason through college, helped fund a dozen other emergencies over the years. But now, with everything that had happened, they were done. My grandpa scheduled an official inspection of the second house. Turns out it was in worse shape than anyone knew. Leaks, damaged wiring, an entire bathroom that hadn't been usable in months. My parents had let it rot. The report gave my grandparents the last thing they needed. Proof of neglect. And just like that, the 30-day notice became a 14-day eviction with legal backing. No more letters. No more warnings. Just a sheriff's deputy, scheduled and confirmed. And here's where it got unexpected. I was at my grandparents' house again, drinking tea on the back porch while Layla colored inside when my grandpa got a phone call. He answered, said nothing for a long moment, then hung up and went inside. A few minutes later, he returned with a fireproof lockbox I'd seen him keep in his closet for years. He opened it and handed me something I never thought I'd see. A full notarized trust. It had my name on it. And Layla's. Apparently, years ago, before everything went bad, my grandparents had started moving their assets quietly, slowly, just in case they ever had to protect the family from within the family. They'd seen how things were going. They just never thought it would get this far. No. The second house wasn't just mine. The first house, their primary residence, had been transferred into the trust too. Jason had been telling people he was going to inherit it. My parents had probably counted on that. All those years of free rent, promises, control. But it was never going to be theirs. It was ours. Me and Layla. And when the eviction day came, they didn't show up. They didn't fight it. They just left in the middle of the night. Left behind trash bags and a broken TV and a house that smelled like bitterness. Still no apologies. No calls. No letters. Just silence. But the next day my grandma did something that made it all feel real. The morning after the eviction, my grandma made pancakes like it was just another Saturday. Calm. Peaceful. She didn't say much until after breakfast, when she handed me a folder and said it was time to stop pretending. Inside were the new estate documents. She and my grandpa had rewritten everything. The house, their accounts, the trust, all of it going to me and Layla. They said it wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. They had watched for years as my parents took and took. They hoped they'd change. They didn't. Later that day, my mom, dad, Jason, and his wife showed up. Uninvited, of course. Probably someone tipped them off. They didn't get past the porch. My grandpa handed my mom a letter. Official removal from the estate. It said they were no longer beneficiaries. Nothing left to argue. Jason lost it, yelling something about betrayal, how they built this family. My grandma just stood there. And then she said, "You turned your back on Jane and Layla when they needed you. You lost your place here." Then she closed the door. They didn't call again. Didn't text. Didn't even show up for the holidays. But my grandparents did. They bring groceries. Help with Layla's homework. Sit on the porch with me while she plays in the yard. There's no more pretending. This is our family now. And honestly, it's all we ever needed.